what's back in the news in the last couple of days is the Kennedy curse. And you all know about the Kennedy curse. It's something that's been already almost century long. And that curse is something that is written all over. It's nothing that I'm going to say anything new. And the way it's said over by many sources, not even Jewish sources, and that the curse is because 3 or 4 different reasons. The grandfather, the father, was called Joe Kennedy. Joe Kennedy had few stories. One story he had with, in 1937, he came back from the UK and he was with Chabad rabbi in the name of Rabbi Jacobson, and he had 6 of his Talmidim. It was the time of Slichot, preparing for Rosh Hashanah. And while they were praying, he didn't like Jews, to say the least, and he thought that they disturbing the passengers. So he went and he asked that the pilot should quiet them down, and that's what the pilot did, since he was a man that was holding a lot of power in the government. And Jews at that time were completely... the pilot told him to quiet down, and he came back with a smirk on his face, and Rabbi Jacobson was humiliated, and he cursed him. And because of that curse, many terrible things happened, as we'll see. Others say that it was after World War II that one of the Jewish refugees, asked Joe Kennedy to save his child and find him a way, because he had a lot of government power, find him a way to escape Europe. And he completely ignored him. That father told him that the same destiny that happens to my child shall happen to your children. And that's the curse that they say that affected the Kennedy family. Others say that because he sold weapons to Nazi Germany. Some say that of Aaron Kotler and of Yaakov Kamenetsky were involved in cursing him because he was very anti-Semite, and he helped the Germans at the war. So because of that, they say that this curse came upon his family. Now the curse, as you all know, in the last catastrophe that they had a couple of days ago, that one of the granddaughters died from overeating. But when we track down from the very beginning, we'll see that the oldest child of Joe Kennedy was Joseph Patrick Kennedy, and he was, as I said, the oldest child of Joe and Rose Kennedy. At 1944, August 12th, he had a plane explosion, and the plane just exploded in the air over England, and he died instantly. Afterwards, his daughter, the daughter of Joe and Rose Kennedy, her name was Kathleen. She was also in such a tragic event. First, she was married to somebody that her parents didn't approve, and sure enough, 4 months after the marriage, this husband was killed by a sniper. She was planning to get married again after she met somebody else. 2 years later, she met a married man, and he promised that he'll leave his wife for her. Her parents were furious. Her mother was furious, Rose Kennedy. But they went to convince the father, Joe Kennedy, while they went to convince him in France, they took off on all his private planes. They took off with the pilot, and it was a severe weather. The pilot said that it's not the time to take off because of the terrible weather. They insisted that they should take off, and sure enough, it crashed. The plane crashed, killing him, her to-be husband, and the pilot. So that happened at 1948, May 13, 1948. On August 9th, 1963, Patrick Kennedy, which was born to Joe Kennedy and Rose Kennedy, was an infant of 2 days old, and he died because of breathing distress syndrome. And this happened actually after having already miscarriages and having a stillborn baby. So this is a list already of things that happened. You can't, and we'll see it keeps on going. You can't just say, you know what, it was a coincidence, it happens. But such a large list doesn't happen usually without some kind of divine thing that gets... the most famous that you all know is the son of Joe Kennedy, the most famous son, and that is JFK, John Kennedy. That was the president of the United States, and he was assassinated, as you all know, while he was going and preparing for his next presidential campaign. This happened in September 1963. He was assassinated, and this is probably the most famous catastrophe of the Kennedy family. The second most famous catastrophe of the family is Ted Kennedy, which was the U.S. ambassador and the senator at the time. He was a senator that also himself, we'll see about Robert Kennedy. But Ted Kennedy was able to escape 2 times death. And one time he was the U.S. senator. He escaped a plane crashed. He crashed into an apple orchard, and the people that were with him died instantly. And he, for a miraculous reason, survived. But he was hospitalized for months afterwards. And then, at 1969, he had a terrible car accident over a bridge, and he had a woman with him that he met, and that woman at the bridge fell down the bridge and drowned or died because of the crash. He was able to escape. He said over that he went down trying to rescue her and find her, but that left a lot of questions about him, because you never know what happens when something happens in the dark and there's no eyewitnesses to anything that happens. So that left questions about him, but these are 2 terrible things that happened to him. Now, as I said, the second most famous death that happened to the Kennedy family is who was called Robert or Bobby Kennedy, which was the U.S. Attorney General. He was assassinated in 1968, just like his brother JFK was assassinated. He was also assassinated. Actually, he was assassinated right after he won the victory of the Democratic presidential primary in California. So that was a big win for him, big victory, and he had a good future coming to him, and he was assassinated right then. After him, we found that Joseph Kennedy, he was the oldest son of Robert, right? Bobby Kennedy, the oldest son. We see that it goes to the descendants of the grandchildren and grandchildren. He also had a terrible accident in 1973, injuring his passengers severely. He was able to live, but his brother was injured terribly at that accident. Nephew of JFK, his name was Ted Kennedy Jr., had his leg amputated at the age of 12. This is how he lived his life. And by the way, besides the deaths that this family occurred, they also had a lot of terrible things. And don't get me wrong, we're not happy for what happened to them. We're not rejoicing. We're not feeling good about what happens. But I'm trying to point out that if there is a curse of a Talmid Chacham, one should take it very seriously, as we'll see the sources for that in Chazal. When you keep on going in the list, you'll see that on April 25th, 1984, David Kennedy, that's already time that we can remember. 1984, David Kennedy, which was the 4th child of Robert Kennedy, died of cocaine overdose. That happened in Palm Beach, Florida. Michael Kennedy, the 6th child of Robert Kennedy, died while skiing at Colorado. He bumped into a tree. He crashed into a tree, and he died a few days afterwards in a hospital. Later on, times that we can definitely remember, in 2011, September 16, a woman named Cara Kennedy was 51. She was the oldest daughter of Ted Kennedy. She died of a heart attack while exercising in Washington, D.C. health club. So that's also a pretty young age. You see that people are dying at young age and not in natural cause. At May 16, 2012, Mary, which was a wife-to-be of Robert Kennedy, also died by suicide. So although she wasn't a descendant of the family, but she was a bride-to-be of Robert Kennedy Jr. Recently, August 1st, just now, we found that Saoirse Hill, which was a 22 years old granddaughter of Robert Kennedy, a young girl. She died of drug overdose, and
there's another one that died from a brain tumor a couple of years ago.
so there was also a daughter of Joe Kennedy that while she was young, they saw things that are not normal by her. So the doctors told him that at the time, that's what they thought, that they have to remove something in the brain and that will make her well. And after they did that, they caused her to be paralyzed for the rest of her life. She died naturally, but she didn't live naturally. All her life, she was completely paralyzed. So this is only a list of things. I just mentioned things that have terrible things, but there are much more things that happen to that family. Now, if you take a look, I mentioned the Kennedy family, but it doesn't. These curses of Talmidei Chachamim is dangerous for Jewish people, no less. If you're all familiar with the term that now became very popular of Yesh Din veYesh Dayan. Anybody that looked into that, there's movies about it, and there's a lot of things that are written about the Gush Katif expel that place out today is called Gaza, and at the time was Gush Katif. The way they expelled the people that live in there, the settlers, it was horrific, terrible, brutal, and everybody that were involved in this were punished. Everybody. And actually, Chacham Ovadia gave a curse. Mamash, you can see that on the video that they made. Chacham Ovadia gave a curse to anybody that will be involved. He's cursed and he will be punished. And also, they show how the Rabbi Milubavitch, when he was speaking to Moshe Katsav, which was eventually the president, he told him that nobody's allowed to give even, he called it a sha'al, which means even a small land of Israel you're not allowed to give away. You're not the owner of any piece of land in Israel. Nobody's the owner. This belongs to God. It doesn't belong to men. And therefore, you're not allowed to give even a piece of land. And he told them, if you give something to the Arabs, you'll get their appetite going, and they're going to want more and more. It's not going to bring peace. It's going to make things worse. And Mamash and Nevuah, he saw things with his wisdom. Chacham Adif Minavi, he saw in his wisdom how things could get much worse. And this is how today it's already known to be the Oslo curse, the Oslo terrible deal that they made. And everybody that were involved in that expulsion from Gush Katif were punished. The first and upmost is the prime minister at the time. His name was Ariel Sharon. Ariel Sharon was a legend up to then for his military career. He was a commander. He was a commander in most wars. He sacrificed himself. He did wonderful things, Ariel Sharon. But it came to an end when he gave away the Gush Katif. When he gave it in a brutal way, he pushed it in the most harsh way that people should be removed from the place of Gush Katif, which today is called Gaza, and be given to the Arabs. Half a year after that happened, after the expel of Gush Katif, he went into a coma for 8 years until he died. And what did Chacham Ovadia said about it? I'm quoting you what Chacham Ovadia said about it, and you could see it. It's on video. It's something that you could see for yourself. He says the following words: "Hakadosh Baruch Hu iten lo bana achat yamut yishan velo yakum." That's what Chacham Ovadia says. He should die, he should sleep and not get up. Look at the diuk of the lashon of Chacham Ovadia. He says he should sleep and not get up. He didn't say only he should die. He'll die eventually, but first sleep and should not get up. זה שהוא מתאכזר על עם ישראל is cruel to עם ישראל. מה האכזריות הזאת? What is this cruelty? ללכת לגרש אנשים, את היהודים שלנו. You're going to expel our Jews, our brothers, our sisters, להכניס בתוכם ערבים, and you bring it in there. The Arabs, הקדוש ברוך הוא ייתן לו מכה אחת שלא יוכל לקום ממנה. Words of Chacham Ovadia. הקדוש ברוך הוא should give him one hit, they should not get out from that מכה. ממש Nevuah of Chacham Ovadia, even if you want to say that he said it afterwards, but beforehand he already gave that curse. So you see that 2 times. He spoke beforehand, he spoke afterwards, and beforehand he gave a curse to anybody that would be involved. And the second one that was involved at that time was the son of Ariel Sharon. His name was Omri Sharon. Omri Sharon was a Knesset member, and he was a personal advisor to his father, Ariel Sharon, and he also, Omri Sharon. כן, רגע. So he himself also was very much pushing for the expulsion of Gush Katif settlers, and eventually he was convicted of false testimony and corruption, and he had to serve term in prison. That was Omri Sharon. And the next one in list was the president at the time. Who was it? Moshe Katsav. Moshe Katsav, you can see how he speaks about you have to do exactly what the government decided. Dina de Malchuta Dina, he became very religious. He was a religious man, very religious. Dina de Malchuta Dina, completely ignoring Gdolei Israel that was saying that it's asur, it's not allowed. You're taking Jews out of their house. By the way, those Jews that they took out of their house were ensharded up to today. Families broken. Majority of families broke. They couldn't get up to their feet. They couldn't find parnasah. They couldn't put their life together anymore. So Moshe Katsav was pushing, yeah, it's the right thing. You have to believe in the system. Eventually, this same Moshe Katsav, years afterwards, was convicted of terrible immorality conduct, the worst kind, I don't want to mention now, the worst kind in 4 different women. And he was also sent to prison time while he was a president. He had to resign and then he already spoke a different language. He didn't believe in the system anymore. He didn't say that whatever. Then he said different things. He said that the system is corrupt and only he's the righteous one. So you can see all what I'm telling you right now is all documented. You can see I'm not even adding something to it. Ehud Olmert, the prime minister at the time after Ariel Sharon, who took office, Ehud Olmert. Ehud Olmert also was one of the big supporters of the expel, and he's the one that ordered the brutal expel of Amona, if anybody remember. Brutal, terrible, how they came down there with bats and guns and beat up the settlers over there. And he was the one that conducted that. He's the one that ordered that. Eventually, Ehud Olmert, while he was a prime minister, he had to resign because eventually he was convicted of corrupt and bribery, and he had to serve time in prison as well, to his shame. Shaul Mofaz, which was at the time defense minister, and he was the one leading the expel of Gush Katif, had to resign after he lost total support of the population. Mamash, nobody wanted him anymore. He had to resign. He had nothing to do in office. The Ramatkal at the time was Dan Chalutz, the commander-in-chief and chief of staff. And he also was the one that leading that expel. Eventually he was blamed of a scandal, misconduct, and he had to resign. Each and every person, mamash, everybody that was involved. There was a Rav Nitzav. His name was Moshe Kradi. He was the Mafkal Mishtara, which one? So he was the head of the police. What would be today? Like you have Commissioner, the head police. Also, after a scandal, he had to resign. Nitzav Bedimos, Ori Barlev, Mefaked HaMivtza. He was the one that was appointed to take people out of their houses. Police investigated him of harassment of women. Dr. Orly Hintz, and he had to resign. 3 years afterwards, his house had to be destroyed because the foundations, even the house with the foundations didn't make it. So they had to destroy it. He had to go and find himself a different place. Nitzav Bedimus, Niso Shacham. He was also mefaked on the police at the time of the expel. And they had videos how he takes people brutally, and he commands the police to take people brutally, and he had the way he speaks to people in such language, such harsh language. Also, he was investigated for immorality crimes against women, and so on and so forth. The list doesn't end. And when we take a look at Chazal, they say that one needs to be very careful when it comes to the curse of the Chachamim. The Gemara says that a rabbi, a Talmid Chacham, afilu, klala, afilu al tenai, ve'afilu al chinam iba, which means if a rabbi curses you, lo alenu, And even if there's no reason, al chinam, eventually it will come. Even al tana, even if it's on a condition that you don't do something or you do something and you did it, you met the condition, still it would come. It's a very, very dangerous thing. Even more so when the person is guilty and he gets a curse, like we see over here. He gets a curse from Gdolei Ador, from Chacham Ovadia, from Aaron Kotler. It's terrible. It's dangerous. You see that? These are facts. What I'm telling you right now is facts. And you can say that maybe everything was coincident, but you have a very harsh time explaining how one thing happens after the other, which normally don't happen to people. So Chazal tell us in Pirkei Avot, Heve Zair Begachalatan Shelo Tichave. Be careful from the calls of the Talmidei Chachamim. Obviously, it's a mashal that you should not get burnt. Sheneshichatan Neshichat Shual. Their teeth, their bite is a bite of an ox, of a fox. Akitzatan Akitzat Akrav. The akitza, the sting, is a sting of a scorpion. Lechishatan, lechishat saraf. Their tongue, when it puts the poison in you, it's a poison of a snake. Saraf. V'chol divrehem kegachalei esh. So one needs to be very careful when we're talking about the Chorban. We're coming in close to Tisha B'Av. Even the Goyim understood that when you do something, you have to be careful, because Neron Keisar, when he was commended to lead the destruction of Bet HaMikdash, and he made all different signs, as we see in the Gemara Nezakin in Gitin Daf Nun Vav, he made all different signs that he saw he's going to be able to conquer Yerushalayim and destroy Yerushalayim. In the end, he backed out. Why? He wasn't afraid. He was afraid of conquering Yerushalayim, not afraid of losing in the battle. Why? He said the following, says the Gemara. The Gemara says that eventually he said, Natati et nikmati be'edom beyad ami Israel. HaKadosh Baruch Hu will revenge his revenge to Edom. Amar Kucha Brichu, ba elechru ve'beita. He said, Niron Kesar said, Amar Kucha Brichu ba elechru ve'beite. HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants to destroy his house because of the sins of Am Yisrael. Uba elechfu reyade be'ugav. And he wants to wash his hands with the blood of the person that would destroy it. So Niron Kesar said, you know what? It's not for me. We see in the parasha that we learned, HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, Nekom et nikmat bnei Israel me'et HaMidyanim. HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants a nekama when you hurt Am Yisrael. And what does Moshe Rabbeinu says? When HaKadosh Baruch Hu is talking, he says, Nekom nikmat bnei Israel. When Moshe Rabbeinu is talking, he says, Nikmat Hashem. Rashi says, because by HaKadosh Baruch Hu, anybody that touches his children, he takes that personal. Then when somebody tries to hurt you in any way, it hurts. But somebody that hurts your children, it hurts even much more. You take that very personal. HaKadosh Baruch Hu takes Am Yisrael personal. If you hurt Am Yisrael, you're going to be hurt much more. And you know what's the classic example that we see today in our time? Anybody can see what happens to the continent that caused Am Yisrael so much suffering throughout history, and that is Europe. Europe throughout history caused Am Yisrael so much pain, so much suffering, so much the acquisition, the Holocaust, the expel, the pogroms, so many different things. What happens now? Now they're getting everything back. Islam is taking over Europe. If you take a look, the estimation in Europe is that they have 44 to 53 million Arabs in Europe. If you take a look in percentage, you'll see that in Cyprus, 25% are Muslims. In Bulgaria, 11%. In France, 9%. In Sweden, 8%. In Belgium, 8%. In Netherlands, 7%. Austria, which was the sister country to Germany, 8%. UK, 6%. Germany, 6%. By the way, if you take a look, one of the least infested countries are who? Denmark. They only have 226,000 Muslims. Why? That's about 4%, roughly. It's a lot, but it's least from all the rest. Why? Because it's known that Denmark helped the Jews. They tried to save Jews, while all the other European countries tried to kill Jews and tried to help Germany in in killing as much Jews as possible, but Denmark helped. So according to a research called PEW, Pew Research, they're saying that in Europe, the population will be by 2030, 8% in the entire Europe. And by 2015, 14%, which means, and that is only from natural growth. Besides the movement that comes now from the Middle East, from Syria, from Egypt, from Lebanon, they fleeing into Europe. President Trump stopped. Oh, by the way, when we're speaking about President Trump, you see exactly the opposite. See, President Trump is taking care of the Jews. You see how successful mamash ve'Hashem be'imo, kol asher yaseh yatzliach. You see there wasn't a president in the history of the United States that they trying to hurt as much as the President Trump. They trying to take him out of office, right?
Yeah. Non-stop. Yeah.
Non-stop.
Impeaching.
Yeah, impeachment. They go in, and there was never a president that they had such an agenda to impeach him, to try to hurt him in every possible way, that he's a racist, that any law that he's trying to pass, they're trying to stop it. And you see that every single law that he tries to pass eventually passes. There's nobody more successful than this president. Why? You can explain it in many different ways. But logically, the Democrats are holding a lot of power and they can stop him, but they're not able to do anything. They're not able to hurt him in any possible way. Why? Because he takes care of the children of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So we see that this puts together over here a lot of different things. And we're not happy for anything bad that happens to any good. We don't have anything against the Goyim. On the contrary, here you have a President Trump. We love him like our own brother. He's doing such wonderful things. I mean, it's endless. We can tell you stories about the wonderful things that he does. And it's not even loving the Jews. It's just somebody that has the right sense. He thinks correctly. He's not corrupted. You look at Democrats. They think so. And even the Republicans presidents were not so good. You see that, for instance, President Bush was allowing Iran to build a nuclear bomb, and he didn't interrupt at all. He said to the president at the time, I think at the time was Ehud Olmert. He told him, I'm not doing anything. I don't like it. I don't agree with it, but I'm not going to get involved in any way. Definitely not military. And the only one that put his foot down is President Trump. For some reason, he stopped all funds, and he got the entire world. Meanwhile, not the entire world, but such sanctions that really choke the Iranians. And it's not only the Iranians. He put under that the Hezbollah movement and all different terrorist movements. And ISIS is already out of business, and so on and so forth. So we see that there's a certain pattern that happens to a person that does good to Am Yisrael, and a certain pattern that happens to a person that does bad to Am Yisrael. We don't wish bad to anybody, but we see that this is something that we need to learn. It's not only Goyim, it's also Jews, also us. If we hurt somebody, HaKadosh Baruch Hu doesn't stay quiet. If you hurt your friend, you hurt your neighbor, you hurt your wife, you hurt your children, you hurt somebody, and it's not justified, you need to know that in the end of the day, there's a payback. HaKadosh Baruch Hu doesn't leave it empty like that, unpaid. It's paid. The chidush over here, it's not only that it's paid in the next world, but it's paid also in this world. Thank you.